when to stop.
Soon. We're working through various ideas on what that can entail, and really a nationwide crime bill is one of the things on the table. A couple of the areas that we're looking at specifically initially is the juvenile crime problem, which is a big thing around the country that there's some ideas on how to address, and also these restrictive policing policies that have done real harm in major cities. I mean, you know, the same people that were very vocal about the defund police movement now seem to have awakened to the reality and recognize that more policing is helpful, and so we're going to address some of those things.
Mr. Speaker, do you think that Thomas Massey deserves to be reelected?
Thomas Massey has to make that decision himself. I mean, he is actively working against his team almost daily now, and seems to enjoy that role. So he is, deciding his own fate.
What about that?
I have bent over backwards to help every member of my conference. As you know, the speaker's job is to lead the incumbent protection program, as I call it. I've had long, thoughtful discussions with Thomas Massey about some of his antics and the way he openly attacks me online almost every hour of every day for sport.
Okay, so this is massive, and it's going to be a huge problem for Trump and Kash Patel. 12 former FBI agents just filed a federal lawsuit against FBI Director Kash Patel, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and the Justice Department, and they're claiming they were illegally fired for kneeling during the 2020 George Floyd protests. Like Trump and Patel went back and found agents who knelt 5 years ago during racial justice demonstrations and fired them for it. And these agents are saying that's unconstitutional retaliation, that they were fired not because they did anything wrong, but because Trump and Patel saw them as disloyal. And now there's a federal lawsuit that's going to put Trump's entire FBI purge on trial. This video is in paid partnership with Kalshi. Before we get deeper into today's Trump topic, I want to show you something that ties directly into it. My partner Kalshi is the largest legal prediction market in the US, and it lets you trade on real-world events. These are real money markets where you're trading against other people, like a stock market for events. Everything on Kalshi is a simple yes or no contract. If a contract is trading at 45 cents, that means the market thinks there's about a 45% chance of that outcome happening. If it resolves yes, it pays out $1 per contract, so entering at 45 cents more than doubles your money if you're correct. Since today's video is about Trump, I literally checked the Trump-related markets on Kalshi before filming just to see what people are trading on right now. You can build a position, scale in and out, and even earn interest on long-term trades before the market resolves. Kalshi is available in all 50 states, has over 1 million users, and has facilitated billions in trades. If you want to try it, Kalshi is giving you $20 when you trade $100. You can go to my partner link, https://kalshi.com/playersunlimited, and use code playersunlimited when you sign up. Thanks to my partner Kalshi, and now back to the video.
Totally unfounded. My way is to reach out an olive branch to everybody and try to be a peacemaker, and some people make that very difficult for me.
Do you think that he's going to succeed in getting the 6 signatures to force this vote?
I don't expect he will, but I mean, the whole effort has been mooted. It's not necessary anymore. Let me make this very clear, as we've made several times the last couple of days. The Oversight Committee's effort goes further than the discharge. It requests and seeks and is actually gathering more documents, it's even anticipated, by the discharge. The discharge is poorly written. It does not adequately protect innocent victims, and that is a very important thing. It doesn't protect whistleblowers or confidential informants or undercover law enforcement agents, which are critical to protect in sex trafficking investigations, obviously. It has lots of problems. The discharge petition goes after the Epstein estate files, which is, we're told by people who know, a treasure trove of information. Discharge doesn't cover it. Discharge doesn't go after the Treasury, the banking records that the Oversight Committee does. They're already gathering that. So
What were the victims who wanted? The victims came up here asking for this.
I spent 2.5 hours with the leading victims, 6 of those women who were the leading spokespersons yesterday. They sat with the entire Oversight Committee, and as you all know, we've got some real bulldogs on both sides of the aisle in that room, fiercely committed to take.
Let me break down what happened, because the details matter here. On June 4th, 2020, during the George Floyd protests in Washington, D.C., these 12 FBI agents were deployed to patrol the streets, and they encountered a mob. Not a peaceful protest, an actual volatile mob with hostile individuals mixed in with families, and these agents didn't have proper riot gear, no shields, no gas masks, no helmets. They were basically exposed and vulnerable, and the mob was getting aggressive. So these agents made a tactical decision. They took a knee. And according to the lawsuit, they did this to de-escalate the situation, to show they weren't there to crack skulls, to calm things down before violence broke out. And it worked. The crowd dispersed peacefully. No violence, no injuries. The agents diffused a dangerous situation using a non-violent tactic. That should be good policing, right? That should be exactly what we want FBI agents to do. Use smart tactics to prevent violence, rather than responding with force. But Trump and Patel don't see it that way. They see those agents kneeling, and they think anti-Trump resistance. They think disloyalty. They think these agents were making a political statement by kneeling. And so 5 years later, after Trump came back into office and installed Kash Patel as FBI director, they fired all 12 of them. And the lawsuit is claiming this is illegal retaliation. The agents are saying their kneeling was an apolitical tactical decision to defuse a volatile situation. It wasn't expressive protest. It wasn't a political statement. It was a law enforcement tactic. And firing them for it violates their First Amendment rights, because even if it was expressive conduct, which they say it wasn't, government employees have First Amendment protections. You can't fire them just for engaging in constitutionally protected expression. So either way, Trump and Patel broke the law by firing these agents. And here's what makes this even more explosive. The agents are alleging that they were targeted because they were perceived as not being affiliated with President Trump, that this is part of a broader pattern where Patel is purging FBI agents who worked on investigations Trump didn't like. Agents who were involved in the Capitol riot cases, agents who investigated Trump's 2020 election claims, agents who are seen as part of the deep state that Trump wants to eliminate. And the kneeling was just an excuse, a justification to fire people Patel wanted, gone anyway for political reasons. The lawsuit specifically names Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, and it's seeking reinstatement for all 12 agents, plus back pay, plus a legal ruling that says what Patel did was unconstitutional. So this isn't just about getting their jobs back. This is about establishing that Trump's FBI purge is illegal, that you can't fire career law enforcement agents for political reasons, and if the agents win, it could open the floodgates for other wrongful termination suits from people Patel has fired or forced out. Now, Trump and Patel are going to argue these agents deserve to be fired. They're going to say kneeling during the 2020 protests was inappropriate, regardless of the tactical reasons. They're going to say it showed bad judgment or political bias. But here's the problem. The FBI assessed this at the time. Back in 2020, when the kneeling happened, FBI leadership reviewed it and determined it wasn't misconduct. The agents weren't disciplined, they weren't fired. The FBI said, okay, this was a reasonable tactical decision in a difficult situation. But now, 5 years later, Patel reopened these old cases and escalated them into termination-level offenses. Why? Because Trump wanted revenge on agents he perceived as disloyal. And that's the pattern the lawsuit is exposing. Patel going back through files, finding agents who did anything Trump might not like, and firing them even if their actions were cleared at the time. That's not legitimate personnel management. That's a political purge, and it's illegal. And now 12 agents are making Patel prove in federal court that their firings were justified. And if the evidence shows this was political retaliation, Patel and Trump are in serious legal trouble. So over the next 20 minutes, we're going to break down exactly what these agents are claiming in their lawsuit. We're going to look at why Patel targeted them and what it reveals about Trump's FBI purge. We're going to talk about the legal implications if the agents win. And we're going to figure out what it means when career law enforcement officers are getting fired for doing their jobs because the president sees them as politically disloyal. Let's get into it. Alright, so let's dig into the specifics of what happened to these agents, what the lawsuit is claiming, and why this is such a huge problem for Trump's Justice Department. Because this case isn't just about 12 people losing their jobs. This is about whether Trump can use the FBI as a political weapon to punish perceived disloyalty. So let's start with the incident itself. June 4th, 2020. The George Floyd protests are happening nationwide. Washington, D.C. is tense. There are demonstrations and some violence, and these 12 FBI agents are deployed to help maintain order. They're out on the streets in D.C., and they encounter a situation that's getting dangerous. There's a mob forming. The lawsuit describes it as including hostile individuals along with families. It's volatile. Things could turn violent fast. And these agents don't have proper riot gear. This is important. They don't have riot shields to protect themselves. No gas masks in case tear gas gets used. No helmets to protect from thrown objects. They're basically exposed, and they're facing a crowd that's getting aggressive. So they make a judgment call. They take a knee. They kneel on the ground. And according to the lawsuit, they did this for tactical reasons. To show they weren't there to be aggressive. To de-escalate before things got out of hand. To signal to the crowd that they wanted to avoid violence. And it worked. The crowd dispersed peacefully. No violence occurred. No one got hurt. The agents accomplished their mission, keeping the peace without having to use force. That's textbook good policing. That's exactly what we should want from law enforcement. Use smart tactics to prevent violence rather than responding with violence. But when images and videos of FBI agents kneeling during protests went viral, Trump and his supporters were furious. They saw it as FBI agents siding with protesters against Trump. They saw it as disloyalty. Now at the time in 2020, FBI leadership reviewed what happened. They looked at whether these agents had engaged in misconduct, and they determined they hadn't. The kneeling was understood as a tactical decision in a difficult situation. The agents weren't disciplined. They weren't fired. They continued working at the FBI, and that should have been the end of it. But then Trump came back into office, and he installed Kash Patel as FBI director, and Patel went back and reopened these cases. According to the lawsuit, Patel specifically targeted agents who had knelt during the 2020 protests. He reviewed the old files, he disregarded the previous FBI assessments that cleared them, and he escalated the cases to termination. He fired all 12 of them. And the lawsuit is claiming this wasn't because of any new information or because the previous reviews were wrong. It was because Trump and Patel wanted revenge on agents they perceived as disloyal. This was political retaliation disguised as personnel management. The lawsuit makes several legal claims. First, they're arguing this is First Amendment retaliation. The agents say their kneeling was either purely tactical, not expressive at all, or if it was expressive, it was constitutionally protected. And you can't fire government employees for engaging in protected expression. That violates the First Amendment. Courts have been really clear about this. Government can't punish employees for their speech or expressive conduct unless there's a compelling reason related to job performance, and diffusing a dangerous situation without violence is good job performance, not bad. Second, the lawsuit argues this is part of a broader pattern of politically motivated firings. The agents claim they were targeted not just for kneeling, but because they were perceived as not being affiliated with Trump. That Patel is systematically purging the FBI of anyone he thinks might be politically opposed to Trump or loyal to institutional norms, rather than to Trump personally. And some of these fired agents had worked on cases Trump didn't like: Capitol riot prosecutions, investigations into election interference, Russia probe stuff. So Patel is using any excuse he can find, including 5-year-old incidents that were already reviewed and cleared, to fire people Trump wants gone. Third, the lawsuit argues the firings were arbitrary and capricious because the FBI already reviewed these incidents in 2020 and cleared the agents. So what changed? Nothing about the agents' conduct changed. The only thing that changed was Trump came back to power and installed Patel, who decided to reopen closed cases for political reasons. That's not how personnel decisions are supposed to work. You can't just arbitrarily reopen old cases and change the outcome because you have political motivations. And the lawsuit names specific defendants: Kash Patel as FBI director, Pam Bondi as attorney general, and the Justice Department and FBI as institutions. So this is hitting the entire Trump DOJ apparatus, and the agents are seeking several things. They want their jobs back. They want back pay for the time they've been out of work, and they want a declaratory judgment, a legal ruling that says what Patel did was unconstitutional and illegal. That would set a precedent that applies to other cases too. Now let's talk about why Patel targeted these agents specifically. Because it's not random. Trump has been obsessed with the 2020 protests since they happened. He saw images of law enforcement kneeling with protesters, and he was enraged. He thought they were siding with his enemies. He thought they were being weak or disloyal. And Trump has a long memory for perceived slights. So when he came back to office and put Patel in charge of the FBI, one of Patel's assignments was to purge agents Trump saw as disloyal, and the kneeling agents were an easy target. There was video evidence, it was public. Trump supporters hated it, so Patel could fire them and frame it as accountability, while really it was political revenge. And this connects to Trump's broader war on the FBI. Trump has always been hostile to the Bureau. He thinks they're part of the deep state. He's never forgiven them for investigating Russian interference and for the various probes into his conduct. And when he won re-election, one of his top priorities was taking control of the FBI and remaking it into an agency that's loyal to him personally rather than to the rule of law. That's why he picked Kash Patel. Patel was a Trump loyalist with no real FBI experience. His qualification was loyalty, and his mission was to purge anyone Trump didn't trust. So these 12 agents are victims of that purge, but they're not the only ones. According to reporting, Patel has fired or forced out dozens of senior FBI officials, people who worked on cases Trump didn't like, people who were seen as too independent or too committed to institutional norms. And the message being sent is clear. If you're not loyal to Trump personally, you're gone. That's how you destroy an institution's independence. Fire everyone who won't pledge personal loyalty and replace them with people who will. But here's where it gets legally interesting. Because these agents are fighting back, they're not just accepting their firings and moving on. They're suing, and they're forcing Patel to defend his actions in federal court. That means discovery. That means depositions. That means internal FBI communications about these firings are going to come out. And if those communications show that Patel targeted these agents for political reasons, if there are emails or memos or statements showing this was about loyalty to Trump rather than legitimate misconduct, then Patel and the DOJ are in serious trouble. Courts don't like politically motivated firings of government employees. There's a lot of case law protecting federal workers from being fired for political reasons. And if these agents can prove they were targeted because of perceived political disloyalty, that's a slam dunk First Amendment retaliation case. The agents win. They get reinstated, they get paid, and it establishes that Patel's purge is illegal, which opens the door for other fired agents to sue, which could unravel Trump's entire takeover of the FBI. And the optics are terrible for Trump, because these agents were doing good police work. They diffused a dangerous situation without violence. They prevented a riot, and 5 years later, Trump's FBI director fired them for it because Trump saw a video of agents kneeling and got mad. That's not accountability, that's not management, that's a vindictive political purge based on Trump's personal grudges. And when that story gets told in federal court with evidence and testimony, it's going to be devastating for Trump's claim that he's just reforming the FBI. Okay, so let's break down what this lawsuit actually means for Trump's FBI purge, for Kash Patel's position, and for the rule of law. Because if these agents win this case, the implications are huge. Here's point 1. This lawsuit is a direct challenge to Trump's ability to politicize the FBI. Trump wants an FBI that's loyal to him personally, that won't investigate him or his allies, that will investigate his enemies, and the way to achieve that is to fire everyone who might resist and replace them with loyalists. But you can't legally do that. Federal employment law protects government workers from being fired for political reasons, and this lawsuit is testing whether those protections actually mean anything when the president really wants to purge his perceived enemies. If the agents win, it establishes that Trump and Patel crossed a legal line, that they can't use flimsy pretexts to fire agents for political reasons, and that creates liability. These 12 agents get reinstated and paid. But more importantly, every other agent Patel fired or forced out now has a template for their own lawsuit. They can point to this case and say Patel did the same thing to me. And if enough agents sue and win, Trump's entire FBI takeover gets blocked by the courts. But if the agents lose, if courts say Patel had legitimate reasons to fire them or that he has broad discretion over personnel decisions, then Trump's purge continues unchecked. Patel can fire anyone he wants and frame it as legitimate management, and the FBI becomes Trump's personal enforcement agency. That's the stakes of this case. It's about whether legal protections for federal employees still exist when the president wants them gone. Point 2. The lawsuit exposes the vindictive nature of Trump's approach to government. These agents were fired for something that happened 5 years ago that was already reviewed and cleared at the time. The only reason it was reopened is because Trump held a grudge. He saw agents kneeling during protests, and he never forgot. And when he got power again, he used that power to punish them. That's not leadership. That's not reform. That's personal vendetta, using government authority. And this reveals a pattern we've seen throughout Trump's career. He keeps enemies lists, he remembers slights, and when he has power, he uses it to retaliate. That's how he operates. And this lawsuit is documenting that in a legal record, the agents are going to present evidence that Patel targeted them because Trump was mad about videos from 2020. That's going to be in court filings and testimony. And it's going to be really hard for Trump to deny that this was personal retaliation when the timeline and the evidence all point that direction. And this makes Trump look petty and authoritarian. He's using the power of the FBI directorship to fire people because they did something 5 years ago that Trump didn't like, even though it was tactically sound and already cleared. That's not the behavior of a confident leader. That's the behavior of an insecure authoritarian who can't tolerate any perceived disloyalty. And swing voters and independents are going to be turned off by that. It reinforces the narrative that Trump is dangerous and vindictive and shouldn't have power. Point 3. Kash Patel is personally exposed here. The lawsuit names him as a defendant, and if the agents win, Patel could be personally liable for damages. That means money out of his own pocket potentially, and it means his reputation is destroyed. He'll be the FBI director who got successfully sued for illegal politically motivated firings. That's not a legacy anyone wants. And it could affect Patel's willingness to continue Trump's purge if he knows every firing creates legal risk for him personally. Now Patel's going to argue he was just doing his job, that he reviewed personnel matters and made decisions he thought were appropriate. But the problem is the timing and the pattern. These cases were reopened shortly after Trump took office and installed Patel. They were all agents who knelt during 2020 protests. They were all cleared at the time, but suddenly escalated to terminations. That looks like political targeting, and courts are going to scrutinize Patel's justifications really carefully. And if internal DOJ communications show Patel was coordinating with the White House or taking direction from Trump on who to fire, that's smoking gun evidence of political motivation, and those communications are going to come out in discovery. So Patel better hope there aren't any emails where he's discussing Trump's enemies list or talking about purging disloyal agents, because if there are, this case is over. The agents win easily. Now let's talk about the political implications, Because this lawsuit is great for Democrats, they can point to it and say, see, Trump is purging law enforcement for political reasons. He's turning the FBI into his personal enforcement arm. He's firing good agents who prevented violence just because he didn't like that they knelt. That's authoritarianism. And voters who care about rule of law and institutional independence are going to respond to that message. And the lawsuit keeps the story alive. Every filing is a news story. Every hearing gets coverage. The trial, if it goes to trial, will be a media event. And the whole time the narrative is Trump's FBI director is being sued for illegal, politically motivated firings. That's sustained negative coverage that Trump can't control. And it feeds into broader concerns about Trump's authoritarian tendencies and his abuse of power. But for Trump's base, this might actually help him, because MAGA voters want Trump to purge the deep state. They see these agents as resistance. They think anyone who knelt during 2020 protests was anti-Trump, so they support the firings. And they'll see this lawsuit as more proof that the system is protecting Trump's enemies, that judges are biased, that career government employees are trying to undermine Trump. So Trump can use this lawsuit to rally his base around the idea that he's fighting entrenched interests. The question is whether the negative coverage and the legal liability outweigh the base mobilization benefits, and that probably depends on whether the agents win. If they win and get reinstated, and Patel's actions are ruled illegal, that's a clear loss for Trump. That's hard to spin. But if they lose, Trump can claim vindication. So both sides have a lot riding on the outcome. Now here's the really important institutional point. The FBI is supposed to be independent from political interference. That's why FBI directors serve 10-year terms that span presidencies. The whole idea is that law enforcement decisions should be made based on evidence and law, not based on what's politically convenient for the president. But Trump is destroying that independence. He's making the FBI answer to him personally, and these firings are part of that project. If courts let Trump get away with it, the FBI becomes a political tool of whoever's president. And that's dangerous for democracy and rule of law, because then future presidents will do the same thing. They'll purge the FBI of people they don't trust politically. And we'll never have truly independent law enforcement at the federal level again. So this lawsuit is about more than 12 agents. It's about whether we're going to preserve institutional independence or whether we're going to accept that the FBI serves the president politically. So where does this leave us? 12 former FBI agents are suing Kash Patel and the Trump Justice Department for firing them over kneeling during 2020 protests. They're claiming political retaliation and First Amendment violations. They're seeking reinstatement and damages. And they're forcing Patel to defend his purge in federal court. If they win it, establishes Trump's FBI takeover as illegal and opens the door for more lawsuits. If they lose, Trump's purge continues unchecked. The stakes are huge. And we're going to be watching this case closely, because it could determine whether Trump succeeds in politicizing the FBI or whether courts stop him. Pay attention, this matters.